Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, your home for Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. You can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe if you like this video, or you can catch us anywhere you get your podcast from. What a game we were treated to last night between the Pittsburgh Penguins and their cross-state rival, the Philadelphia Flyers. Ends in a 5-4 win for the Pittsburgh Penguins, but it certainly didn't start out that way. The Penguins, for what seemed like the 80th time this season, give up a goal on the first shot on goal, and then it just got worse and worse from there. A horrid first period, a rough start to the second period, and then at that point, something happened. They were down 3-0. Could have been 4-0 if not for a high-sticking call on a previous goal, but down 3-0. And something happened to not just energize the fans, but something happened to energize the Pittsburgh Penguins bench. Alex Nedeljkovic is yanked by Mike Sullivan. Joel Blomqvist is going in, and Nedeljkovic, who has struggled mightily since the Four Nations face-off break came to an end, decides, I'm going to throw a little bit of a tantrum. I'm going to throw a little bit of a hissy fit. He snaps his stick over the crossbar and then over his knee, skates back to the bench, slams the bench door, and yells at, I wish I could tell what he was saying, but he seemed to yell at the entire team, whether that was the coaching staff, whether that was his teammates. It seemed like he was yelling pretty much at everybody that he could get into his way. Then he storms down towards the locker room, and you looked at that and said, boy, the Penguins have kind of reached rock bottom. Well, the good thing about that is once you reach rock bottom, there's only one direction to go. And that's exactly what happened for the Pittsburgh Penguins last night. Shortly after that happened, Penn scored back-to-back goals within a minute and a half of each other. First, Phil Tomasino with a beautiful goal to beat Samuel Ersson. And then Erik Karlsson scores his first of two on the night. And all of a sudden, the Penguins are back in this. And all of a sudden, they have life. And all of a sudden, this game is hotly contested. And it almost had an air of Penguins versus Flyers past. It was so poetic because it was a very similar situation to that of Max Talbot back in 2009, whenever he skated off the ice after getting absolutely pounded by Daniel Carcillo, by the way, and gave the old shh. Now, it wasn't the same thing, but it was very similar and very poetic on the night that they had a Max Talbot giveaway and a Max Talbot t-shirt. I loved everything about that. And then something else happened that has been talked about a lot over the last 24 hours. I'm sure it will continue to be talked about for the next 24 hours, and that's Boko Imama's hit on Garnett Hathaway. My thoughts on the hit is it was cheap. It was certainly a cheap shot, but I don't think it was dirty, and I think there's a clear distinction between the two. After the game, John Tortorella, head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers, called it both, and I think that there's times where it can be both. But I don't think this is one of those instances, and that's exactly why the referees on the ice took it down from a major penalty to a 2-minute minor. See, it's a cheap shot in my eyes, and this is probably going to be refuted by anybody on the eastern portion of the state. But to me, it's a cheap shot simply because Garnett Hathaway didn't have the puck, and he wasn't looking anywhere in the direction of Boko Imama. It was a blindside hit. It was interference, and it was certainly warranted to get the 2-minute minor. Dirty, I think, is the actual execution of the hit. And that hit wasn't dirty. It was shoulder to shoulder, and most of the impact was between Garnett Hathaway and the ice, not Garnett Hathaway and Boko Imama. Now, again, people can have their opinions. People can say, well, if it's that late, if it's that blatant of an interference, then it's dirty. If that's your opinion, fine. I just don't share it. And I think that's why the NHL referee sat there and said it wasn't a dirty hit, so it doesn't warrant a misconduct, but it was a cheap shot, and it was interference by the book. By the letter of the law, it was interference. So I think they got the call right on that one. I don't think that there was any intentions. Boko Imama said after the game that there was no intention to injure him, and even John Tortorella said, I don't think he was going out there looking to injure Garnett Hathaway. But he responded. He stood up for Noel Acciari, and that's more than we can say about most members of the Pittsburgh Penguins throughout the first 60 games of this season. So I liked what he did. I wish it didn't end in the injury of Garnett Hathaway. Obviously, we hope for the best for Hathaway, but I think that hit gave more energy to the Pittsburgh Penguins, even though on the ensuing power play, the Philadelphia Flyers were able to score a goal thanks to Matvei Michkov, who is an absolute animal. But then we get to the third period. Evgeni Malkin scores a goal really early. The Penguins still don't play their best in the third period, but it gets to overtime. And once again, Evgeni Malkin steps up and makes a lot of young players on the Philadelphia Flyers look a little foolish because he's the wily vet. He was patient and he held on to the puck until everything passed and was able to beat Samuel Ersson and give the Penguins their first win in many, many, many weeks. It was the Penguins' first 3-goal comeback of this season, and Evgeni Malkin was the driving factor. I'm going to say this, and this is probably an understatement. The time off did Malkin very, very well. He missed the final 6 games leading into the Four Nations face-off break with a lower body injury. Then he gets a 2-week break due to the Four Nations face-off, and since he's been on an absolute tear. 4 games, 7 points, 3 goals, and 4 assists, including his 4-point game yesterday where he scored 2 goals, 2 assists, and turned back the clock looking like prime Art Ross version of Evgeni Malkin. He has been very, very good since the Penguins returned, and I understand that Sidney Crosby has been good as well, but Evgeni Malkin, last night was the statement, last night was the exclamation point, has been the Penguins' best player over this past 4 games. He might not be able to do this and withstand it over a full 82-game slate, but when he can do it in these short spurts, it proves that he has so much left in the tank. And all that tells me is, while I understand he has probably 1 year left, and again, nothing is confirmed, Evgeni Malkin can get to the end of next year and say, you know what? I want to go for one more kick at the can. I want to go for one more trip around the sun in the NHL. But it feels as if next year might be it for Evgeni Malkin. I just need to see him fully rested and get into the playoffs one more time. Could you imagine this level of Evgeni Malkin in a playoff series? It's something we haven't seen in a very long time. And even at 38, even at 39, if Malkin had this level of energy, this level of rest going into a playoff series, which means the Penguins would, 1, have to make the playoffs, and 2, probably have to make it convincingly so Evgeni Malkin didn't have to strain himself down the stretch run of a season just to get them into the playoffs. But if they were able to do that, big if, big hypothetical here, man, do I need to see Evgeni Malkin get the opportunity to take over a playoff series just one more time. That's all I want to see going into the next year. I want to see them get into the playoffs simply because I want to see Evgeni Malkin get that opportunity. But nonetheless, he has been spectacular and nothing short of it in the 4 games since the Pittsburgh Penguins returned. I'm not sure how long he's going to be able to sustain that, especially considering the schedule has been hectic and it's only going to pick up from here. But he has been extremely fun to watch. And if you're a Pittsburgh Penguins fan, just count your blessings that you still get to watch this guy go to work every single day. We say it so much about Sidney Crosby. The same has to be said for Evgeni Malkin when he's playing at this level. Let's finish off the show with a quick update, something that happened yesterday, and I didn't want to just let it linger throughout the weekend without making a statement on it, or at the very least bringing it up for those who come here for your Pittsburgh Penguins news. Michael Bunting is out indefinitely following surgery earlier this week. He missed practice on Wednesday, and reports came out that he missed it due to an illness, and that's nothing new. Brian Rust missed all of last weekend due to an illness. There was a lot of players at the Four Nations that were in and out of the lineup due to an illness. Brady Tkachuk was one of them. So it seems to be something that's going around the NHL and going around NHL locker rooms. So I thought nothing of it. And then, lo and behold, the Penguins announced yesterday that he had an appendectomy and he is out indefinitely. It is a rough go for Michael Bunting in the year 2025. It all started with a car accident when he was driving to the arena for a game on January 12th. Fortunately, he was able to recover from that and only missed 1 game, came back in, and the play hasn't really been great. 1 goal, 4 assists in his 15 games since. He was demoted to the 3rd line before he was taken out of the lineup this past game. And now this. I mean, you just wish the best for Michael Bunting, and you hope for a speedy recovery, but it has been a rough 2025 for the Pittsburgh Penguins top six forward. He's the leader in power play goals on the team, so it's a pretty big blow on the ice for the Pittsburgh Penguins, even though that does come secondary. In an instance like this, he has 9 power play goals, leads the team, 4th in total goals with 14, and 6th on the team in points with 29 on the season. Now, the other part of this is it does have a minor impact on the trade deadline, which is coming up here in 1 week. It wasn't guaranteed that Michael Bunting was going to be moved. I think it's definitely not going to happen now, but Michael Bunting was a piece that a lot of teams could look at and say, listen, there's a little bit of control here. He has 1 year left at $4.5 million, which is a very reasonable cap hit for a player that can, as we talked about, fill the back of the net. The guy has had multiple 20-goal seasons in his NHL career. He is the leader for the Pittsburgh Penguins in power play goals, and it has been a good power play this year, still top 10, despite the fact it's been pretty cold since the Four Nations break. There would have been teams that at the very least would have called about Michael Bunting. Now, whether or not they would have met the asking price that Kyle Dubas would have set, that's a completely different story. But there would have been interest in Michael Bunting had he been healthy going into the trade deadline. That all gets thrown out the window. That much remains to be seen about what happens this offseason with Michael Bunting, but I think the door is definitely closed on him going to a different team before the trade deadline next Friday. So again, thoughts and prayers. A lot of hope for speedy recovery for Michael Bunting. It's been a rough 2025. We hope it gets better as the year goes on. But that's going to do it for this episode of The Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. Remember, you can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Or you can check us out anywhere you get your podcast from. We'll see you guys next time.